Alrighty. Oh, sorry. Week 6. I'm not sorry about week 6. Maybe. No, I'm not sorry about week 6. I can't even make up a funny about that. That's how not funny that is. So, week 6 is what I would term a do week, meaning we've studied a lot. You've gotten exposure to, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap. So now we're going to take this, and I kind of previewed this last week, which I notice I do. I kind of preview the week and then the week after. But in this week 6, you're going to now say, now that I know enough about Bootstrap to at least kind of look at and understand the structure, which you're going to build on that this week, now you're going to find a template. And so I just want to give you a little heads up. The video you're going to have from this week for Monday and from Tuesday, I really debated if I should re-record it, but as I watched it, it still pertains. And what I mean by that is that it was when I was just recommending Bootstrap 4, but because it's Bootstrap 5, really all these concepts still apply. But I at least want to show you, because as I looked around, so this is, let me just say the topic and then tell you what I did. So what you're going to look for this week as your first item is a template. So it's like we're kind of layering upon layers of abstraction, meaning, right, we're using a framework that is helping you write easier, faster, responsive sites, Bootstrap. And then on top of that, you're going to find a template already written in Bootstrap in order to customize for your project 0. Okay. And this is very much what happens when you're doing web development. Now, it may not be this particular stack, although I think with Bootstrap 5, we see more and more developers kind of going back to it a little bit, because many people, including me, for work that I do outside of here when I talk to other folks, would not recommend Bootstrap 4 because of the jQuery component. So now it's quicker, more agile. Okay, so just FYI. So the whole reason for me bringing this up was to say, I'm not going to change those videos because I think they're still really good. But what I did as to kind of support this idea is I started looking at some of the Bootstrap 5 templates. And it's important that you spend a little time looking at that code, because some of these templates can get, I don't want to say more complicated, but more involved. Like there was one I looked at that I liked, because one of the things we naturally do is we look at like the way it looks. And you want to do that. You want to find something that you feel, based on the topic of your project 0, reflects that, feeling, just as to the extent that you can, right? But once you've done that, and then it's really important to start reading some of the details of the template, both from how is it organized, what does it need to run, because I found what I liked, and then I started looking at the detail for how it's implemented, and I realized that it was I needed to clone, or that it was recommending that I clone. It was recommending I sign up for something else, and those were just red flags that kept going off and off and off. So my heads up to you is, once you find the one you like, then spend a little time both looking at their documentation, because if it's a template of any worth, it will have documentation, right? Look at how you implement it. If there's some things that you need that we haven't covered yet, as an example, there are systems for creating websites from what we call build systems, Gulp, Grunt, Webpack, SAS, which is that same concept but for CSS exclusively. So once you start seeing things like that, I would just be a little hesitant, because, as I said, I stepped through about 5 steps in the site that I thought, I'm going to use this because I like the way it looks. And I still may just because I know how to do it. But for what we're doing in this class, you just want to be a little, you know, be a little, and I'll say this, but don't pay for it, first of all. Now, if you were developing a professional site, you could pay for it. So, and you would want to then understand what you get for paying for it. But again, you don't have to do that for this class. I just want you to know, if you did ever want to take that next step, you'd want to understand what you're getting for that. Okay, so just FYI. All right, so let's take a look. So, this is the video I was talking about, right? So I'm going to leave this, but this Bootstrap, finding this template, and I put this update because as I started looking at it, I was like, right? So looking for Bootstrap templates that are free. Many of these may be Bootstrap 4, and it might make you go, well, could I use a Bootstrap 4? And my answer would be sure, you sure can. Just know you're going to see some jQuery in there. If it was me, I'd definitely want to use a Bootstrap 5 template because that's built on it. But is there a major difference between Bootstrap 4 and Bootstrap 5? Except for the jQuery, most of the CSS syntax that is like the grid and other things are very similar. Okay. And then Res did already a link here, and I think he chose a really good one. So I always appreciate that he works ahead and gives you a good. And I don't think he'd mind, right? This is I've seen this one actually. I think I've used this one at some point. I believe this is Bootstrap 5, right? That's one of the first things I would want to do. So that's where, looking at the live site, viewing the source code, you can tell based on the source. Now, this is one I can tell because of this package.json that it is Bootstrap 1.5.0. Okay. It may not need some of these build systems, but often package.json would indicate that. But there is your source. So this is your JS, your assets, and this is a Sass one. So this looks like an updated version of one I've seen before. So what you want to do is definitely spend some time looking in here. Here's the distribution. Here's your index file, right? So what you want to do here is spend some time looking at how this is built, because one of the things I saw in the one that I looked at is they were doing what's called an include, which, by the way, is great. And what that does is it breaks your page into parts of the HTML, let's say the index page, that repeats over and over. And then rather than on each individual page, which, by the way, you're going to have, they use an include. But in order to use that include, you have to run it through these build systems. So that was one of the flags that I saw when I did that. Now, one of the things I want to say, okay, so first, just be right, just take some time to do that. And then the other thing is understand that the sites that we're going to build need to have individual pages. And let's just actually look at this one. Let's look at the live preview here, right? So here's the live preview. That's the other thing is that notice, and this is nice because it shows you how it's going to look. This technology is also built into, if you right click on any site, you come over here, you can tell what it's going to look like from like an iPad. What's that going to look like on an iPad? So because you want things to be responsive for sure, right? So that's one thing. And let's just see if I click on, this is a good example. So thanks for posting it. So this is what we would call a single page app. And what this is one, it looks like here, unless somehow they're blocking from me seeing the URL as it's rendered. And I would also think this because there's only one HTML file. There's not a file for all the menus. So that's one thing that if you use a single page app like this, that for our purposes of our project 0, you'll want to have these as individual pages. And it's fairly easy to break that. Like if I was to come in here, again, this is a little more what we're going to get into this week, but I would see that I can see from this A link So a ref, the ref part is a pound sign. Anytime you see the pound, what that is doing is moving to a place down in the page, right? So it's just basically anchor. We call these anchors. But what you're going to want to end up doing is creating individual pages, right? That's an important part as you're looking at this. So even if what you end up liking, as an example here, just know that ultimately what you're going to want is for each, because this is your menu, right? This is, you need 4 to 5 menu items, and then each menu then would go to a page that would have sub pages. So where this rolls down, these are single page, and it looks nice. I get it. What I want you to have the experience of is actually kind of the old school of building sites, because at some point you're going to run into this and you start to appreciate why things like single page apps or injecting HTML and CSS starts to make sense. Because then it's like when I need to update one page or one part of the page, instead of having to touch each page, okay, I can just do it in one location. Actually, the idea of CSS, the idea of cascading, okay? So I did put that, I believe, on my attendance post because I wanted to. Let me see, because I believe I did want to make sure I discuss that concept because that's an important one. Yeah, so a single page web app versus a multiple page site. So again, if you select a template that is a single, you can break that, create individual pages so that instead of anchors, where this does in the same HTML, you actually have this linked out to separate pages. But I do talk about this a little bit as we move through this week and next. Okay. All right. So the step one in this week is to select that template, right? So you're selecting that template. Sorry, let me roll down to week 6. Then you're actually going to build that into your local system, meaning into your GitHub IO, right? Again, this video goes over that, and then you're going to dive in, right? So spend a little time looking for sure, giving you some hints already about stuff you want to look for. Once you find one, I definitely, even before you select it, to start doing the copy and placing it into your GitHub IO, spend a little time looking at the code, how it's implemented. Once you're ready, then you'll do that. And I have you create a folder for whatever the template name is. And then we end up building web pages. I believe build your site from template is part of Thursday. So you spend a day also just looking at the HTML and how the HTML and the CSS are used to create your site. So you're basically, because you've already studied Bootstrap, now you're studying just how this site's put together. And this will require a little bit of work. Obviously, the more involved your site is, the more lines that will be in there. So, come talk to me if you want to chat about any of that. All right. So then, so this is a due week. This is definitely a due week. And I've given you some, heads up for things you might search for. Bootstrap template free, Bootstrap 5 template free. Start with either one of these. You could just do Bootstrap templates, right? But you want something, because the thing is, the more that page is set up to already handle your menu, right? Even if you end up having to change it from these anchor links to external pages. So the more this is already set up with some kind of menuing system, the easier it's going to be for you to implement your design into it. All right, so I just finished a little while ago looking at your work for week 5, and most of you seem to understand the requirements for Project Zero. And as we get further in, hopefully it starts to even be more clear, because as I said, we work on it each week from here to the end. All right, I hope this helps you navigate this week. I look forward to seeing your templates. The other thing is, you all need to select different templates just because it makes it better, I think, to see, and then we will see everyone's work as we move through the process of customizing it for our own particular needs. This is a pretty real world exercise, this Project Zero, because it's not unheard of that somebody may come to you and say, hey, I need a quick site. Could you show me something? And, within a matter of hours, you can set something up at least for them to look at. So, but you're obviously going to have to build out more pages, and that's something in the requirements that we'll talk about as we move through. All right. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.